Our past, present, and future. PBS Hawaiʻi, home is here.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Carl Smith Ball, providing legal services throughout Hawaii and the Pacific since 1857, making a positive difference in the communities where we live and work. Hawaii has long been the backdrop for Hollywood blockbusters and hit TV shows. But now with series cancellations and no big projects on the horizon, Hawaii sets have gone quiet. What will it take to bring film projects back, create more jobs, and build a thriving industry that tells Hawaii's own stories? Join the conversation about rejuvenating Hawaii's film industry, next on Insights.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise. Right now, there's a huge hit about Hawaii. Jason Momoa's Chief of War, streaming to audiences around the world. Clearly, Hawaii is a draw. Our stories resonate. And yet no major shows are filming here today. That wasn't always the case. Think of Magnum P.I., Hawaii Five-0, Lost, Jurassic Park, 50 First Dates, The White Lotus. The list is long. But with the cancellation of the most recent series shot here, film sets in our islands have gone silent. Some say that Hawaii's tax breaks are not as favorable as other locations, while others believe that the infrastructure for shooting and finishing films here is not on par with other states and countries. But with the success of recent movies and series about Hawaii, is there hope on the horizon for our island's film industry? We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii YouTube page. Now to our guests. Senator Lynn DeCoite represents District 7, which includes East and Upcountry Maui, Molokai, and Lanai. She was raised on Molokai and served on the State Board of Agriculture before being elected. She chairs the Economic Development and Tourism Committee. Sumner Croix is Professor Emeritus at the UH Manoa Department of Economics and a Senior Research Fellow with the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization. His research focuses on economic history and contemporary public policy issues in our state. James Tokioka is the Director of DBED, the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism. He served on the Kauai County Council for 10 years and as a member of the Hawaii State House of Representatives for 16. Prior to his work in government, he worked in the hospitality industry. And renowned waterman Brian Keaulana has worked as a producer, water safety expert, and action coordinator on films and television series. In 2023, he co-founded the International Cultural Arts Network, a nonprofit dedicated to elevating Pacific Islander representation in Hawaii's film industry. Thank you all for being here today, a distinguished panel for sure. Brian, I want to start with you. You've worked in this industry in a number of ways over the last 4 decades. How would you rate the health of Hawaii's film industry as someone who has worked in it for as long as you have?
It's a hard pill to swallow, just because there's no work right now. I see the future actually coming bright with a lot of concepts, scripts and things like that. We also have the greatest talent here as far as workforce. We got great actors and great filmers, great directors, and the success of Hawaii shows with the past Lilo and Stitch and Chief of War right now also too. So for us, I think really, we need like infrastructure really, for us to move forward, in all this. But I feel that right now, what we did is we created this Hawaii Film Alliance. So we got all the subject matter experts in the field of filming and put everybody's heads together and try to be real creative of how can we make this a sustainable industry, to where the industry can last and be competitive, with the rest of the world. So right now, I think that, yeah, we had one low, but I think our high is coming up.
Okay. Senator DeCoite, you know, we have focused so much on the tax credits, and I know that you have been a champion of trying to increase our tax credits. Tell us about why you think that this is a worthy investment for Hawaii.
So as Brian has shared with us, you know, if you look at our talent here, you looked at the film industry really is promoting Hawaii. We talk about the tourism industry, and when I look at the major shows that have come about and movies, I said you travel across the world and the first thing is somebody's from Hawaii is in this country and everybody just flocks to those individuals. Filming has put us on the map. It has marketed Hawaii, and I believe that when you see other states and other countries put up tax credits, you gotta invest in the industry to make money, but more so invest in the people. You know, you have a great crew on many of these sets. You have locals that have started from the bottom and worked their way up. Who better than to invest in but the people that live here, work here, and want to make their lives here and their homes here. I believe in the tax credits. I have always believed in it because I believe the return of investment is there. Though the data might not show that, I believe we haven't looked at it in the right places on the outcomes of what streaming does for us. And the streaming really needs to put a price tag on what is that value when that film hits around the world, around the country. Perfect example is Lilo and Stitch. It hit the charts at #1 around the world. It really depicted the lifestyle of these individual families. I mean, really, when that came about in live action, you can't beat it. I mean, it really showed a family's lifestyle, that we might have our families that are a little jammed up, as it was said by Stitch, but that's our family. We love it. This is why people come to Hawaii, is because they want to see that. Chief of War is also the classic example of that. And I believe it needs to be utilized with the tax credits.
Sumner, how do we figure out what the economic impact of this industry is when we think about, you know, when we talk about the number of jobs and the impact that the senator is talking about, how can we quantify that?
Well, I think DeepEd has done some good studies on this where they've tried to quantify the impact. And I think we know what the impact is. We have an industry worth about $750 million up to $1 billion. Okay, let's put that in context. The whole state economy is about $110 billion, $115 billion. That may seem really small, but you know, that's exactly how we diversify. That's how we have a healthy economy, is that we have a bunch of small industries beyond our major ones of tourism and the military, healthcare, education. Okay, but I'm convinced that what we're going through right now is just a lull. I really think that we need to remember that series have their seasonality. I think the Magnum series, we're pretty much spent. The Hawaii Five-0 series, we've gone through 2 really good runs with Hawaii Five-0. There's tons of NCISs around. Not surprising that they're reformulating some of those shows. I think we'll see more Hawaii-based series because people like to watch Hawaii-based series. You know, I'm totally confident of that. On the other hand, that's no solace for the people who don't have employment right now. But I do think we're also facing a time when there's a shift in comparative advantage. There's a shift in comparative advantage away from the U.S. and toward other countries. And this is just partly because of the strength of the dollar. Producers are looking and saying, I can get more by going to other countries. Other countries have invested in facilities. They've invested in workforces. And you're finding film productions in places, not just New Zealand, Australia, and Canada, some of our biggest competitors, but also places like Bulgaria or Hungary that we normally don't think of as hosting a lot of film productions, but they do nowadays.
Director Tokioka, do you think that our deficiency is in infrastructure or tax credits or a combination of the two?
Yeah, definitely a combination of the two. You know, we have the Kalailoa studio, who is leasing the studio to us, the Navy is, to DBED, but right now with the transition going on with the lands from the state and the federal government, there is no certainty that we will still have that facility. So it's hard for us to invest into that or get a management company to invest in that studio because there's no certainty that we will still have it after 2028. So we are trying to expedite that as soon as possible so that it is our biggest studio. And, you know, Magnum was there, a lot of the films were there, and they still have the infrastructure there. On the upstairs of this studio is hospital spaces. And so for any series, especially some kind of action series, they need those hospital spaces because in those series, that's where they go, and it's there. So we want to make sure that we can keep that facility. We have Diamond Head. Diamond Head has 2 big studios, but it's not big enough for some of the productions that come in. So for us, it's just a matter of making sure we're putting out an RFP soon for a producer to come in and say, I'll manage the studio for you. I'll try to get the productions for you. And our goal has always been to make it affordable. So productions come in, and we have in the past charged them, what the cost is of these studios. And so that way they can use that as part of the incentive to come to Hawaii. And, we've been working hard on those things. And, I'm looking forward to soon signing that RFP that a lot of people have asked us about. They want to manage the studio, but until we put that RFP out, which is coming out in a couple of weeks, we'll know who manages the studio and who's going to help us bring those productions in.
So that person would essentially act as a broker, basically,
Yes.
to go out and have conversations with production companies and say, come shoot here.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I know that, we've spoken to Brian and his team, and, I'm not saying that because he's sitting right here, because I've said it many times before. It's great to see local people like Brian and many others. Maine Kinimaka, who's in Chief of War and is a producer, and she's young. It's great to see all this talent that Brian talked about earlier. Local people that are in the industry and doing well, and we need to make sure that, we invest in them. And, one of the organizations that Brian is involved in, ICANN, is doing that, teaching them about acting, teaching them about the business of film and television. So, these are all good things that are happening. And as Sumner said, these things are in place now. We lost some of these productions, but we also have a lot of people that we've been meeting with in the past 3 months that want to have a production in Hawaii, because we know, and they know, that the tax credit is not being used for this current year. So they want to jump in there and make sure that those tax credits can be used to help them with their productions.
I mean, for the industry to be healthy here, there really needs to be 3 things. I mean, one thing is a tax credit that's competitive and yet doesn't face the whole winner's curse syndrome. The winner's curse syndrome is where you just overpay, and you end up competing with other states to a point where you really don't make any money off the industry. There's other states that have done that. The Nebraskas of the world, Wisconsins, Michigans have gone in, had really high tax credits, and then tried to set up a film industry, and it's only been temporarily successful, and then they've been left kind of with the wreckage of a failed industry. I think that's a real big point in Hawaii, that we've never really gone for extreme tax credits. We've had very moderate tax credits. Sometimes adjustments have to be made, but we have not joined that particular race. The second one is you have to invest in human capital, and I think we're doing that via the UH system and private organizations. The third one is you need the studio facilities, and even with these 2 facilities, I still think that we just lag behind on the studio facilities, and the efforts to build another facility out at UH West Oahu have lagged. They've been very slow. It doesn't appear as if they're going anywhere, which isn't surprising given that there's no productions going on right now. But I am hoping that effort gets a little bit more steam, and that we end up building that additional facility. We have a great teaching facility out at UH West Oahu. It really would be good if that was coupled with a studio out there. There's the train, and et cetera there. But actually, I think we're on the road to what we need to do in this industry. The state has actually done quite a few good things.
Well, Senator, to his point about tax credits, the legislature passed a bill that would have imposed basically a sunset, right, on the tax credits. The governor vetoed it, basically saving that. Why do you think that there is this sentiment tell us about the sentiment among other lawmakers who might not feel as passionately to support this industry as you do?
So I think, and this is why HFA was created. The Hawaii Film Alliance was created really to gather data, present that data in a way that can be explained to a lot of the lawmakers. Some of my colleagues, when they look at it, they say, these guys making money off of the film industry, they're making all this money, but yet behind what they don't see is, these expenses that occur, the investment that we're hiring local talent. Where the outside talent is bring in, you have ICANN. And when I look at ICANN, you know, it's not just that the training is there, but it's those actors that have acted in many of these famous movies that have committed their time. You know, it's also on us that the state needs to show good faith. And that good faith is about investing in the future of Hawaii. You know, we talk about the type of tourism and tourism industry. I can tell you that the film industry has been very respectful. You know, it's family-driven, family-oriented. At the same time, you have these investors that want to come in that belong to this industry. And until we, you know, somehow show that our commitment is there and to be at least competitive with other states and other countries like New Zealand and stuff, you know, there's a lot we can learn from what's happening. We're not saying a massive tax credit increase, but you have to make change along that way. And if we don't, we'll never see the outcome of it. Again, too, the data that shows it, there has literally not been focused on what is the value behind the streaming during prime time. And I can tell you this, when I ask, what does it cost me to stream something for 1 hour during prime time? It costs us about $100 million. Now, if I invested that in the tourism industry, say HTA, what am I getting out of that when, even when we talk about marketing, people might bash me on this, when we talk about marketing, I said, Hawaii markets itself. Let's make that real clear. You can go anywhere and talk about Hawaii, and I'll tell you right now, when people come to Hawaii, I ask them this question: have you seen any of our ads via HTA and our marketing process? You know what they tell me? No, that person like Brian invited me, and I asked him if I could come, and I get that question answered more times than normal, which is why I believe data-driven with the Hawaii Film Alliance, and that all of different partners and unions and the different agencies that are involved in that, they need to come together, and this data needs to be produced so that we as lawmakers can make a sound decision on this is why we're investing. This is the justification behind whether or not the cap needs to be lifted to justify the means behind where we're trying to go in this industry. And I believe this is an industry that is now has gone cold and dried, but yet now we're taking this at the unemployment office. That doesn't do us any justice right now.
Well, Brian, I want to hear your experience because I know that you worked on Chief of War. You were in New Zealand. And I'm just curious about what the climate was like there in terms of supporting this industry, because we hear a lot about just how competitive that country is with us when it comes to these productions.
You know, I think about, you know, like everybody think compete. I think more collaborate. Because, you know, and I always say, right, we're not divided by land, but we're connected by water. And it's through all Polynesian cultures that we find that common bond, and how we navigate, whether it's the ocean or film, we all navigate together. And so, you know, even our brothers and sisters from Aotearoa has given so much back to us also too. And having one global view of things, not just, you know, we focus so much on Oahu, like really, I look at the outer islands, like can they benefit, you know? Can they be locally run, Maui and Big Island especially? And the answer is yes. They have talented people on that island that we work with also too. When they come here to film any production, the shipping alone is just, it's crazy just to try to ship equipment. So if we diversify outside and think of us into more, you know, stretching out, now we kind of build more hands and feet, and we can kind of like divvy out. I look at our film industry like, what is the legacy? Like for me, I've been involved in this industry for like close to 4 decades, but my success is not me right now. My success is what is the legacy after? You know, who's the next Jason Momoa? Who's the next Rock, the Dwayne Johnson? Who's the next, you know, directors, producers? How do we build them up to like how New Zealand is with like Taika Waititi? Because, and the other part is, we cannot focus so much on the big stuff. We gotta focus on the little stuff, the small details, the independent movies, the Kukinis that we just had, the whole Mao, you know, all these smaller ones that the creative locals, because I tell you the biggest challenges is how do we control our own narratives? Because other people outside, and I have a lot of scripts being given, they trying to tell our molelos or our stories. And I just in this common fight with my own self, like, oh man, we have people here that actually can do the job, you know, and versus all these outside forces that trying to come in to dictate, and we see this all the time, right? Hey, brother, what you doing? All this kind of things, and they interpret us, of what they think we are. Chief of War is a one that is passionate, driven from, Jason taking this story and holding on to it till he has the creative control to work in the smallest of details of the feathers, the tapa, the weaving. I mean, it is done from the inside out and the bottom up. And it's proven now that we can do this, we just need the support now.
Yeah, Jimmy, our Director Tokioka, I want to get to you on something that the Senator had pointed out, which is that there is this value that comes from the streaming, right? From Chief of War being seen around the planet, from Lilo and Stitch and all those families going to the theater and enjoying that and making that connection to Hawaii. When you think about the marketing dollars, and I think that's a different show as to whether or not Hawaii sells itself. I'm sure there's a debate to be had, but what do you think is the benefit, the economic benefit of having that kind of, for lack of a better word, free advertising for the islands?
And Sumner knows this, and economists know this as well. It's hard to place a dollar value on that. But if you just look at, films that have been for decades filmed in Hawaii, you look at some of these movies now when they say Bukum Dano, where did they get that from? They got it from Hawaii Five-0. When people see, and not a film, but like golf in Hawaii during December, when you have the Century, and we pray that the Century will continue to stay in Hawaii, because it's not a film, but it's a tournament. And everyone around the world, especially on the U.S. mainland, sees it. But there's a huge value to that. I'm not sure that you can pick the exact number or percentage of the spend versus the dollars that come in, but it's certainly there. It doesn't end. It just is a continual reminder that, I want to go to Hawaii. And Hawaii Five-0, NCIS, all of these shows, depicted Hawaii in a way that, people see the beauty of the islands. And that's the part I think we all agree that there's no price tag on that. And that's why in HTA, we're submitting a bill that will include film in the marketing portion of HTA. We want to advertise, we want to use film production as a way to bring dollars into the state. And it's just a couple of words into the HRS, like film production, sports, and other activities in Chapter 201. So it's big for everything that we do, but it's hard to quantify it. But I think everyone knows that it is important for the industry that we promote it.
Sumner, I mean, it's basically brand awareness, right? You think about somebody,
sure.
a family in Milwaukee watching their television, and it plants a seed. Oh, I want to sit and have a Mai Tai and see Diamond Head, right?
Now the studies have been, there is a study that's been done of this back, it was done 4 years ago on 2020 tourism. And it showed that people who come here from Japan particularly come here because they've seen Hawaii on TV. I think it was up to 40% of the people checked that off as their leading reason why they come to Hawaii. That's really amazing. Canada was number 2. You go back to the U.S., it was much smaller. Same thing with Korea and whatever. There's also people who come here for film tourism. There's people who come here to see the sites where the films are made. There's still people flocking in to see Lost, where Lost was filmed with great excitement, and that's part of our tourism industry. That's a much smaller reason to have that's a much smaller reason to have the credit. But I should note that all the existing studies of the credit show a net benefit for Hawaii. They haven't shown this necessarily for other states. For Hawaii, the credit does yield a net benefit. That doesn't include all the benefits that we're talking about here. That doesn't include just the fact that there's spillovers into tourism. The tourism gets free marketing out of the film and television industry.
How big should the credit be?
And this is why I brought up, it should be data driven, right? And we need to figure out what is the cost of that marketing power. Like we said, the film industry has been here for a long time. You take a look at Kauai, when Kauai had Jurassic Park. I mean, even at that level, that place was booming. Restaurants, hotels were at its all-time peak. We gotta grab that data, and I look towards UH and the economists to kind of put a price tag on it. Only then can I literally said to myself, okay, based on that data, it should be driven because there has to be a justification in the use of taxpayer dollars. I mean, everything should look at it that way if you look at it just like running a business. You know, you gotta invest, you gotta put your money, especially in a time like now where we're looking at all these federal cuts. We have to come up with some other way to generate it, and it's not gonna have people at the unemployment line. That is not the way you run a state. We have to figure it out. This is why we've pushed more towards diversification. We moved into sports. We saw what COVID did to us. We cracked every egg in that basket, and the only industry that was running was the film industry. And it was running at its peak and in the most safest way possible. I mean, I was down in New Zealand, a complete different mission, and we made our way down to Chief of War, 3-hour ride. And let me tell you, our local people are down there, the relationships of New Zealand, you know, and just what Brian said, that's our cousins. Yeah. You know, and we've shared and we're separated by water, but at the end of the day, it's a collaboration of the industry in itself. Every production would love to do it here in Hawaii. And I can tell you, even when we move and we're going to live with Moana, I can tell you that will also just pump this industry and market off the heck out of Hawaii. So we gotta really wake up and smell the roses at some point. But I can't expect my colleagues to buy into this data-driven information to say, okay, here, this is where we're at.
Sumner, it sounds like you're being tasked to do another study.
I'm working on another study, so it's almost done. We'll be out with another study soon. But I think a small increase in the credit is warranted to show that we're still interested in the game, that we're still players in the game. We're at 22% for Oahu right now and 27% for the Native Islands. Moving that up to 25 and 30%, I think would be warranted. Our cap is really low. Yeah. It's at $50 million. We could well move that up to 70 or 80. Yeah. We could move the per production fee up from 17 to some higher number.
I'm so glad that that answer is coming from your mouth right now. Well, it means a lot.
Okay. It's okay, but I think that we could do that. It's really necessary to have a cap, though, because Hawaii has been burned badly by tax credits that don't have caps before. One of the problems with tax credits is structuring them appropriately, okay? And all it takes is one lawyer somewhere to look at the tax credit and say, here's a way basically for me to get a lot more money out of the tax credit than Senator DeCoite ever intended, or the director of Tokioka ever intended was going to come out of it. And all of a sudden we're left with a big bill. That's what happened back in the early 2000s, that period 1999 to 2004, we had Act 221, which gave tax credits in all sorts of developing industries. Essentially, those credits were gamed by investors. And gamed, that's what you expect investors to do. They're trying to get the best out of the credits that they can. But it cost the state an enormous amount of money, and it was a fiasco. So it's really critical for us to keep a cap. But look, we've had 20% inflation since 2019, the last time the cap was adjusted. That would move the cap from $50 to $60 million. So there's a lot to be said to move it up in that 60 to 65 to 70 or even higher area. Given that we have so few productions right now, it's not clear we're going to reach the cap for a while, so I don't see this as being a terrible thing. We do need to remember, though, that although the tax credit yields some net benefits for the state, it also yields losses in tax revenue. So if we start moving the credit up, there will be a net loss in tax revenue. It's not as if all of a sudden we're going to find that there's just a lot more net revenue for the state. There's going to be an additional tax revenue loss for the state. So some of this comes at a cost. It comes at a cost of revenue for other programs.
But the theory is we spend it on the tax credit, but the industry spends it in the community. So that's the theory.
Multiplier.
And that's why I said earlier, it's hard to figure out exactly what that amount is. And, you know, I agree with Sumner that we've done a lot of studies and there is the net benefit, but it's hard to pinpoint that number down. And hopefully he can come up.
Well, it is hard to pinpoint it down because it really relies on, for example, out-of-state actors. How much do they spend in Hawaii? This kind of stuff is hard to figure out. How much tax revenue do we actually get out of out-of-state people who come to work here? Well, it's something we can figure out with Department of Taxation, but it's somewhat detailed. And the thing is, with a changing industry, there's going to be changing employees, changing composition of people working here. It's going to change over time. So looking for looking for precision here is going to be difficult.
Let me bring in some of the viewer questions. Brian, I hope you can take this one. Sherry writes in, why is it that past TV shows like Magnum PI and NCIS Hawaii had no good, solid local actors? So sad to see. What can be done to promote real local actors? This goes back to your point about Hawaii people telling Hawaii stories.
You know, acting is an art, right? You know, and again, it's the art of the people who is the creators into that film also too. So you have people in the upper level of, you know, they providing for the investors, you know, and right now we in the seat of like, hey, we can prove that our people can do the job. We have great people here. We just gotta, you know, like take a chance, like what Jason did. Jason took one chance, big chance, right? Whoever heard of on an international platform, Olelo, right off the bat, you know, they have to have trust, you know, into all this and stuff too. But I mean, we get actors like Moses Goods, you know, and just so much different talent that we have here. Again, we got to reinvest in ourselves. That's the whole thing. You know, how do we reinvest in ourselves? I think the other thing I wanted to bring up is that we also, in the seat of, we climbed up into the above the line people, right? Producers, directors, where the first time I came into the whole Hollywood scene, a lot of my friends from Macau would say, Brian, Hollywood going to change you, you know, especially when I went to California. And I had the attitude, no, I think I'm going to change Hollywood, you know, and exactly that, right? Bring Hawaii home to them, you know, just bring them home, feed them, you know, play with them, make them understand our values, who we are, you know, prove our worth, our treasures of what we grew up with and stuff too, and it's proven. And now we sitting in the seats, like again, like go back to Chief of War, now we can go to, hey, go hire the local vendors. Or when you cast from the area that we're going to impact, you know, instead of throwing a wide net and get everybody, cast there first. Because one of the things for me is like, we might tap into the genealogy of that character there in the families there and go much deeper into the story, which a lot of people don't know, but we know, you know, that's the whole thing and stuff too. So the filming here now is at such one great height of success. We just need everyone to like, okay, we trust you now.
Director Tokioka, if you could take this one. What other local industries and vendors have benefited from the film industry when we think about that ripple outward? And this might be one for you as well, Sumner. You know, you think about, of course, the hotels that all these, you know, the producers and the actors and everyone stays in, the restaurants. I mean, when you think about the ripple effect, how big is it?
It's huge. And I'll go back to what Senator DeCoite said. Senate President and I were on Kauai when they were filming Jurassic Park. They bought out a hotel. In fact, they bought out a hotel and half a hotel. And you can just see all of the catering that was done for this shoot, all of the transportation that was, you know, a big part of moving people around, security for the production, bathrooms, and all of this set production. So carpenters coming in, and these are all local people. And you know, when we would go out during that time, people would just say, this is the best thing, you know, this industry. And you can see it on Kauai, because Kauai is small. When it's here on Oahu, there's a lot of different places to stay. You don't have that you know, microscope like Kauai. And that was something that really hit home for myself and the Senate President, that, you know, this is what makes Kauai shine. Because they want to be on Kauai for the scenery, they want to be there for the people, the restaurants are doing good, everybody's doing good, it's exciting. So I would just tell you that those industries, to answer that question, all benefit from a production coming to Hawaii. And when it comes to a place like Hawaii, or even, you know, different parts of the neighboring islands, it's huge. Of course, here in Honolulu, but those industries get hit, you know, with a big influx of resources and capital.
Well, let's talk about the flip side, Sumner, when those productions pick up and leave, when we have, you know, Hawaii Five-0. This is the first time, I believe, in 25 years that we don't have a series consistently shooting in Hawaii. What has that done to us?
Well, look, the film industry is an export industry, mostly. I mean, there's some films that we produce, such as some PBS films that are mostly for internal consumption here. But most of the films that we're talking about being made in Hawaii that's export. That's outside money coming in and purchasing goods and services here in Hawaii. That's the kind of stuff that keeps this economy healthy. Is where we have those export goods. When that's removed, there's a negative multiplier. It's not just the people in the film industry that suffer, but the fact that they're not buying as many groceries, that they're not spending as much on rent. This hurts other people, and then their spending is affected. So this is the standard multiplier effect in economics. This is also why essentially, you're not going to have an industry without the credits. Every single jurisdiction in the country, knows that it can try to attract a film industry because of the multiplier effect. If it can get the film industry to come in, it's not just going to get the film industry, it's getting other spending, it's getting other industries thriving. And essentially what the film industry then asks, what these producers ask is, hey, we want a certain share of that surplus that you're getting. You're getting some surplus out of us being here. We want you to share that with us. And then localities compete, states basically compete to give back some of the surplus. It's just a game we need to make sure we don't overdo. Because it's a dangerous game to get too involved in.
There's a question here from Casey, Senator, if you would take this. How do we get local film and TV production back into Hawaii and all those high-paying local film jobs in front and behind the camera? Sadly, tourism, big real estate dominating our state legislature and government funding priorities. You did mention that we are having, with the new administration, obviously a shift in federal priorities, let's say. And so there's going to be a lot of push and pull in terms of where Hawaii tax dollars should go. How do you make the argument? I mean, we've heard it here articulated in a number of ways, but how do you make that then to your colleagues?
So I think having PBS tonight
You'll send them the link, right?
is really good. I mean, it pushes out information, and as we have this dialogue, and we've been talking about this for several years now, I can tell you when I showed up on the Big Island, I was invited to come and take a look at Chief of War. I was just amazed at when I just stepped out of the van, and I'm like, just local people all over the place. I think they were on the last shoot. But what I do know, and even when I spoke with Brian and the team and Jason guys in the Big Island, I was just amazed that as they went into some of these communities, it was literally to have that conversation. We're wanting to come in, we're asking for acceptance. Even when they were told in some of these areas that, no, this is not what we want. These industries also contributed to these communities, and we're thankful of that exchange. But, it starts with, having that conversation. Chief of War, again, is a perfect example of a Hawaiian, a movie that depicts our Hawaiian stories. And I always said, whoever writes the book tells a story. Why not let the people here tell that story? And this is why this platform that we're having tonight, I believe it will be super beneficial and helpful as we wait for Sumner to finish off on some of the data that we're really going to need before upcoming session, because it's been a full court press at this time. That a conversation is being had with many of my colleagues, myself, and our committees. We've had several info briefings. I've worked closely with Director Tokioka and Deputy Dane Wicker. And it's a work in progress, but again, we have to invest back into whether it be money, resources, because we have to show a commitment to the industry. And that commitment needs to come from this state, that we are serious about investing not just in the film industry, but in the people that live here, and that will be the talent that we've seen today in many of these shows and movies and documentaries as well. I mean, I cannot tell you the outcome of all these businesses that have said, man, we've lost a lot, and it just literally went dry and it bellied up. It's not a good look on Hawaii. It's like as if we're not open for business, but we have to commit and give that.
There have been huge drop-offs in California, too. I mean, California and New York have both experienced massive declines in television shooting. I think California went from like 18,700 separate shoots down to about 7,700, just over 2 years, 2021 to 2023, and another 22% in the first quarter of 2025. I mean, California's fall-off has been huge. So they've had the same kind of discussions there as how do we revitalize the California film industry? And they've also talked about credits, raising the cap on the credits. But the other thing they've talked about there is trying to figure out how to streamline regulation of the industry. I mean, people come here because they want to film in public spaces. They want the public backdrops. They want to film with the mountains, the beach, the ocean in sight. And then I think it's probably time for us to take another look at how we're managing all that.
Do you
I'm not
think
saying,
that
I'm not saying we're doing a bad job. I'm not trying to say we're doing a bad job. But California, one of the things, California's running into some of the same problems we are. It's not always the case somebody wants a lane of the freeway closed down. People worry about nesting birds being disturbed by shoots on the beach. Here we worry about sea turtles being disturbed. There certainly was a show that filmed recently in Hawaii that had some complaints about this and had a hard time resolving it with the
Rescue
state.
High Surf.
Okay,
Yeah,
maybe
Rescue High Surf,
Rescue
for
High Surf.
And it was super successful. But it's also too like our whole thing really. We had the most locals on top down, and we're always mindful of what we do because the way we operate is not in ownership, is in stewardship, right? How do we bring our Hawaiian values in one filmmaking way and do that? And we had our executive producer, Matt Kester, who's a local boy, had Noah. I mean, we had more locals on the upper end managing this show. Even when we go out, like our location people, ask permission before permits. Go to the local people and ask. And if they say no, then move on to something else. But I think that's the thing is that, and it was a successful show, which, it was too much challenges and it went down. But the other thing I want to talk about too is like, California, they have a lot of studios, a lot of shows, and so the infrastructure got to be maintained in a huge manner. Versus over here, I mean, we get 4 shows here, we running rich. That's the thing. So to get at least two anchored shows here is great, especially for TV. So for us, we have to think into one specialty. Kind of like we fit one niche that nobody else has. That's why I said, don't compete. We stand alone, let's collaborate, That's our success. We don't have to be competing with Atlanta and everybody else,
But, it's true too that it's not only Hawaii that's struggling right now. The entire country is struggling.
Yeah.
And so we're not an outlier. We're part of, the industry is new now. So, for the state of Hawaii, and Senator DeCoite knows this, it's all hands on deck. The governor has been in many meetings with Chief of War, with other productions. With Rescue High Surf, we were in a lot of meetings trying to help with, some of the green sea turtles. We went to DLNR, Brian and I were there, supporting, a different way to manage the shorelines.
We did 52 real rescues on that show. Wow. 52 real rescues. It was on rescue show, but our own lifeguards and actors pulled in people like when shark ready to attack. I got footage when shark is swimming for 2 tourists and we pulled them out of the water. Our own actor at Waimea swam out and rescued tourists. So it was on show that was giving back to the community also too, as well as employing the community. But again, we're not going to cry over what was. We want to go forward and what will be.
But I only brought this up just because I think I notice California is just looking at how can we streamline some of the stuff, how can we improve it, and I don't think we do a bad job of it here, but it's useful always to ask other ways we could work on trying to make sure these problems are resolved a little bit better or whatever. That's a standard note, and I think given that we have some downtime among people involved in the industry, they're not managing a lot of shoots right now. I think this is a good time to be looking at some of those procedures, applications, permits, and seeing that we really have it together.
Director, I wonder if we stay out of the game for too long, do we not get to play, right? I mean, we know that we're in a lull now, but sort of momentum, progress begets progress, or however you want to say it, a body in motion stays in motion, and we're not in motion right now.
I hear that, but I can tell you, sitting in the seat that I hold, we have a lot of interest from big productions within the last 2 months. And we're sitting down talking about how we can get productions here in Hawaii. And, there's Jason, there's Dwayne, there's Daniel Day Kim, they want to be here in Hawaii when they do their production. So we've been talking to a lot of people. A lot of series that have been filmed here before, like Jumanji, are talking about, productions coming back. So I don't subscribe to the fact that if we're out of the game, because Hawaii is the backdrop. Hawaii is the place that they want to be. What we're doing at DBED is, Hawaii first, and that's a critical message is Hawaii first in the productions, Hawaii first in the upticks. If we're going to introduce a bill that if there's certain upticks, like if the film is in Olelo, Hawaii, if they use local music, if you use local uniforms, hires, all of this, there's going to be certain upticks for different things that we didn't have before. And Deputy Director Dane Wicker has been working on that, and it is Hawaii first. So those are the types of things that will involve different industries in one collaboration when a film hits production here in Hawaii, and it's critical. So we're working with ICANN, because there's a lot of different things that happen in the film industry. You can't only have the film tax credit. You got to have the training. You got to have the workforce. And we're going down into the schools where like YNIC writers, Chifes Kamakahele, there are schools in this state that do so good in competitions around the country, but when they get to college and when they get past college, what's there for them? So that's why we're trying to, energize those productions. We're trying to give them opportunities to film, to be in a production, and I think ICANN has been doing a great job with that, and the university system. So, we are giving, part of the tax credits come with monies that go to fund other things. And what we're going to do with the direction of Senator DeCoite and Senator Kim talking about in the WAM committee, talking about how we leverage those monies that go into the Film Special Fund to help fund schools that are doing excellent jobs in productions and training the kids on the industry. So, there's a lot of things that are happening, and it's exciting, but it's almost like starting from scratch. I think we've been spoiled. I hate to use that word, but I think we've been spoiled for a long time, and now that nothing is there, and we had, I don't know that anybody thought NCIS was going to leave suddenly like they did. And it's hard to have a plan B when plan A is still in the room. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, what's interesting, and Senator DeCoite, this idea of this tiered incentive that the director is talking about makes a lot of sense and seems like it would be a good pitch to lawmakers, this idea that if you get more, the more you put Hawaii first. Tell me a little bit about that.
So, a lot of that is being worked out right now. And again, it takes both buy-in from the House and Senate. Governor has been on board from the beginning. We've had several meetings with the governor as well, but you have to provide those incentives. We have to be, and I'm going to say, we have to be at the competitive level if we want to bring people here. When I look at the industry itself and watch, and I see all these local people, some, and I'm going to say, they've maybe come out of jail. And I was amazed to see one of them that was directing on set, and I was thinking, Jesus Christ. But these are individuals that never had education, but they find their calling there. There is almost every job you can imagine, whether it's set crew, whether it was making many of the props that was there. Some of those props looked so real, and I'm like, wow, this looks plastic. But it depicts all of the things that I know growing up as a Native Hawaiian myself. It literally tells a story of who we are, where we came from. So these incentives need to be put out there. And of course, it needs buy-in on both the House and the Senate. And I think, as we provide the information and the data that needs to be warranted, I said, it will provide that opportunity. And like I said, many of these companies are waiting in the wings. What does Hawaii really want? Do they understand where they're at as well as where we're at moving forward? Again, we've worked really closely with Director Tokioka. And I can tell you, Deputy Wicker has done an amazing job as we've been going through, a lot of different examples of how we're going to move legislation forward. But, it's sad that when we're in a predicament like this, that we tend to scramble and, like they said, you got to get on plan A, on plan B, and sometimes on C, D, and E. And, we need to prepare ourselves better, just like when we talk about natural disasters. I'm saying right now we're in a natural disaster, but this is a disaster on our own, and we need to fix it, and we need to show them that we are committed to moving forward.
Yeah, Brian, I mean, you started out this conversation talking about the wealth of talent, and, you know, the director talked about educational spaces and places for young people to learn how to get into this industry. We do have to have the jobs on the other side, but, you know, when you think about the creative talent that's here in Hawaii, is there enough done to support them, and what are you seeing in that regard?
Well, we don't have the space, right? So I have like great stunt people training every night, right, in California, in Texas, all over. And we don't have a facility here for our own stunt people to have and train. It's like having their own gym kind of thing, right? So just that. The other thing too is like, you know, I always think success in phases, right? Because you cannot do one big job, right? And we all got to put down our swords, grab the rake, and all work together and try and clean this place up. So, you know, for example, everybody hires us for water all over the world, regardless if it's Hawaii. They just fly us, you know, everywhere. We need a water tank. You know, I've worked in the best water tanks in Malta, in Mexico, in New Zealand, all over, and we don't have a great water tank. We would have probably held some of the movies in the past here and kept the whole show here if we had a tank. The other part too is nowadays, like this room, you get the whole LED screen. It's Mandalorian, you know, and you can do amazing stuff, you know, with just that. And so much productions would be there, and you can do everything conceptually right there, you know, controlled and done in phases, you know, and then from there build out, you know.
Yeah, so Director, I mean, what we're really hearing is a need for more infrastructure, and you talked about the Kailailoa facility. Is there sort of an appetite to do more beyond that, or do we have to stick with what we have in the short term?
So we have 2 studios, or 1.5 kind of. But there are people who are talking about building studios in Hawaii. I don't see the appetite from the legislature or even the administration to build another brand new facility. Because we're not, you know, our task is not going to be to manage the studio. It's there for them to use. So I don't see that happening on the near horizon. But there are people that are interested and are in the process of figuring out whether they can afford it right now as we speak. And one of them is in UH, next to the property at UH West Oahu. There's another, I'm understanding that site up, going up towards Wahiwa that people are looking at to build a studio. So if that happens, great. But I would think that wouldn't be in the appetite of the legislature to fund right now. I personally would rather have them increase the tax credit than try to build a new studio.
But I really don't think a future studio should be a public studio. There's no reason why a future studio can't be a private studio. On the other hand, if you look at any major manufacturing facility, and that's what a studio is, it's a manufacturing facility, in the United States, of a project over $100 million, they all have some type of assistance from the state in building it. But I do think that there's a lot to be said to have a private operator operate the next studio, and perhaps even privatize the other 2 studios that are currently in existence. There's really no reason to have the state be part of that particular part of the industry. I'm not saying the state's done a bad job with I mean, they've remodeled a ways back. They remodeled the Diamond Head studio. Work's being done.
It's not our expertise, though.
No,
So
but it's not the expertise. It really isn't something that the state should be involved in managing. But as I mentioned before, you really need to have some kind of assistance. So I know that one of the projects went to the city council and asked for an exemption from some of the property tax burden, and the city council passed a bill that allowed that exemption.
You know,
There's also talk
the
about
mayor has been really supportive of, you know, Mayor Blanchard has also been part of our conversation. But again, too, you know, the priority has been the tax credit and the incentives. And, you know, you can ask for the world, but what is the priority? You know, and we're in a time when money is going to be really tight. You know, we're dealing with everything from healthcare to teachers increase in wages and so forth. You know, you got to work through some of what we believe that the state can afford. We got to live within our means, and when the ask comes from the industry that, you know, it's more on the tax credits that they're looking towards as well as incentives, you know, we got to home in. And this is where we need to be. It's not so much as the infrastructure. I can tell you, even when I went down to New Zealand and Brian talked about the water tank, I mean, it's something you could literally put together. And now we're, you know, when I gotta hear that we're flying people out to do training in a water tank when it's something simple here. Again, too, it has been a controversial issue. Again, take a look at some of the format of how they've done it, even on the recycling part of it. So it needs a lot more education, and as our Keaulana, to educate people on what we're doing so they have a clear understanding, which is why the support base behind the communities needs to be had as we educate people on this is where we're at, this is what we're trying to do, while we try to keep local talent here and continue to do business as best as we can respectfully in Hawaii. We need to have that support base and prioritize the needs of the industry itself, and that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, we're almost out of time, but Brian, I wanted to ask you this question. It says, besides buying movie tickets, what can us regular folks do to help bring film jobs back?
Start writing. I think everyone themselves has a story. If you ask anybody, right, you have some kind of funny story, drama story, whatever, just start writing, because you never know. I look at, like my hero right now is Matt Kester, because I know him for so long, being one local boy from Kahuku, surf, all that, became one school teacher. All of a sudden, he got into writing and executive producer, and how to create more Matt Kesters. And they're out there, We have people that just write, do a story. And if you need help, hey, call, because one of the things that I like invest in for me, myself, I got water equipment, I got stuff, and I may have limited time, but at least I can guide people and help them film their project. Like Paula Funga did Kukini, right? And it was on Passion Project, did that and loved it. But we got to do more of those real, just independent, down in the dirt, and everybody get involved and help.
I love that. Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Mahalo for joining us tonight. We of course, do thank our guests, Senator Lynn DeCoite and Director of DBED, James Tokioka, and UHERO Senior Researcher Sumner Croix, and Waterman producer and stunt coordinator Brian Keaulana. Next week on Insights around the state and the globe, there is an increase in the frequency and severity of flash floods. So what can we do here in Hawaii to prepare for serious rain conditions? Please do join us then. I'm Yanji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi. Aloha.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Carl Smith Ball, providing legal services throughout Hawaii and the Pacific since 1857, making a positive difference in the communities where we live and work.